Am I good? Welcome, everyone. Please stand and join us at the moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety birthday is May 29th, 2010. Welcome to the 7 p.m. Thursday night treasure map group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a closed meeting of it's an open meeting. I need to get this fixed. But spouses are welcome, so everybody's welcome. Everyone's welcome. We send a special welcome to any visitors from out of town. Please stand and introduce yourself. Hey, Kevin. Welcome. Do you have any other visitors from out of town? Also, anyone who may be visiting the treasure map meeting for the first time, please stand and be recognized. Oh. Welcome. Oh, they're moving. I was like, what are they doing? Finally, is there anyone here with at their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? Please stand and be recognized. Well, if you are new or this is your first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and you're just a little shy, there is definitely love here for you. But at the back table, there is Eric over here. He is at our newcomer table. If you need any information or looking for any kind of help, he can give you a hand. Thank you so much. Treasure Map Group of Alcoholics Anonymous believes in working the 12 steps as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with the sponsor. There are many home group members here tonight that are willing to be sponsors. If you are new or if you don't have a sponsor, you can stop at the back table during the break and see Eric or Randy for names and numbers of home group members willing to sponsor others. So tonight is birthday night. And we'll get to that here, so we're going to skip this part. And so the Treasure Map Group of Alcoholics Anonymous is committed to bringing a message of hope to those who suffer from alcoholism. We believe this message is contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and our personal experiences. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So a couple of announcements. So one, we do have the online Tradition 7. So if you don't have any cash, because I don't carry cash in me, so it's a good way to donate to the home group. So that is something you can definitely do. Keep that in mind. We also have these lovely cards. I'm ahead of you, Randy. I got you. We have these cards. If this is a meeting that you enjoy and want to share it with other people, definitely grab a stack of these in the back and you can hand them out. You can put your name and your phone number. This is really great to give to newcomers, to give them a place to go and a way to contact someone. There's a stack up here and there's some in the back as well. And I don't know what the other thing you were holding up, Randy. I'm sorry. Bad Axe Men's Not a Retreat. It's a hangout. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a dance? Advance, not a dance. Sorry. Hearing. Questions on that, please see Randy. He obviously knows more about it than I do. And now, please welcome, we have Kevin, Spencer, Iowa, reading How It Works. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kevin. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Kevin.
Grateful to be sober and at a meeting tonight. Chapter 5 of the Big Book, How It Works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go, absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, probably admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order. I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged." No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We're not saints. The point is, we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we are alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Now, please welcome Mike to read the traditions as we pass the baskets. Thank you in advance for your generosity and support. Tradition 7 states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Short one.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike, and I'm an alcoholic. The 12 traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you again, Mike. We talk a lot about home group membership at the Treasure Map Group because we believe it is vital to our recovery. What does it mean to be a home group member? Here is a brief excerpt from the AA General Service Conference-approved pamphlet on the AA group. Traditionally, most AA members through the years have found it important to belong to one group that they call their home group. This is the group where they accept service responsibilities and try to sustain friendships. And although all AA members are usually welcome at all groups and feel at home at any of these meetings, the concept of the home group has still remained the strongest bond between the AA member and the fellowship. With membership comes the right to vote on issues that might affect the group or might also affect AA as a whole, a process that forms the very cornerstone of the AA service structure. As with all group conscious matters, each AA member has one vote, and this ideally is voiced through the home group. Over the years, the very essence of AA strength has remained with our home group, which for many members becomes our extended family. Once isolated by our drinking, we found it in the home group a solid, continuing support system, friends, and very often a sponsor. We also learned firsthand through the group's working how to place principles before personalities in the interest of carrying the AA message. Talking about her own home group, a member says, "Part of my commitment is to show up at my home group meeting, greet newcomers at the door, and be available to them. Not only for them, but for me. My fellow group members are the people who know me, listen to me, and steer me straight when I am off in left field. They give me their experience, strength, and AA love, enabling me to pass it on to the alcoholic who still suffers." If you are interested in making the Treasure Map meeting your home group, please see Randy at the back table, at the break, or after the meeting. Now, before we start with birthday night and our speaker, can please everyone remember to shut off or silence your cell phones? Tonight is birthday night. The Treasure Map Group celebrates the birthdays of its home group members on the last Thursday of each month. We celebrate every month for the first 12 months of sobriety and every year thereafter. We believe birthday night is a night of gratitude. We will present the chip to the home group members celebrating their birthday and give them a brief moment to express their gratitude. After we have presented all the chips, we will take a break and celebrate with birthday cake before the speaker shares tonight. If you'd like to become a home group member and celebrate your birthday, please stop at the registration table at the break and let us know. So I do know that we have one home group member tonight celebrating. Is Tracy here? Is that you? No? Oh. Do we have anybody else celebrating tonight? Come on. Oh, 1 year. 1 year? Woo-hoo. Come on.
I'm not getting that close. This is as good as it's getting. I actually, I was listening to you when you talked about the sponsor thing, or that what they said about the home group meeting, and I have signed up at this as my home group. It's just hard for me to get here early. And but I thought about it because I really did meet my sponsor here. And I know people that I've known for a while here that make me feel comfortable. You, Taylor. And so I just really appreciate a group like this where you can not only learn and grow, but you can get the support of other people. And I just really happy to be a part of this program. Thank you.
And do we have anyone else celebrating this evening? So we will now have a 20-minute break where we will enjoy cake, coffee. If you do smoke, please out there, is there a can? Put your butts in the can. Thank you all so much. I gave her one of those. We didn't have a one. So I hope that's okay. Got Joan. Joan. Want to double check? Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. It is now my pleasure to introduce Joan tonight. She is going to share her story. I'll be in the back now.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Joan, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety birth date, August 14th, 1987, is my sobriety birth date. I am cautiously happy to be here. I hope by the end of this that you are cautiously happy that I was here too. I got a text from Mike D that I'm now convinced came while he was sitting at an airport on his way to Ireland, asking if I would come and speak. And I'm always happy to speak when I'm asked to in Alcoholics Anonymous. I asked him what I was supposed to talk about, and it took him an hour and a half to respond to me. So he said, just my experience, strength, and hope. So I'll qualify myself a little bit, and then we'll go from there. And whatever comes out of my mouth tonight in your prayers, you blame God directly for whatever I say. And Mike Donnelly, he assured me that at some point he would listen to this. So I just want to say to you that ever since I got your text, you have been on my prayer list, and I have prayed for you diligently, like you would pray for somebody that you're working through a resentment with. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said, in 1987. I started drinking, however, long before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. My family would do the Mogen David 7-Up combination at Easter, Christmas, and Thanksgiving time. And I can honestly tell you at 8 years old that alcohol had no appeal to me. I just thought it was fizzy and poppy, and I didn't start drinking at the age of 8. And I'd had many Christmases, many Easters, many Thanksgivings, and drank my fill of Mogen David, but that didn't start me down the road to alcoholism. I was in high school. I come from a wonderfully horrible alcoholic family, and at times things were so fun at home, and at other times things were so chaotic that I didn't know how to cope. So as a sophomore in high school, my two worlds collided, and I ended up attempting suicide, and I found myself in the hospital. And I woke up from my attempted suicide, obviously embarrassed, because I had survived it. I should back up a little bit and tell you that I got the idea to commit suicide because I had been admitted to the behavioral health unit, and I had been given some Librium and Librax. And when I got out of the behavioral health unit and came home, reality is something that I just couldn't face. I just wasn't equipped to face reality. And so I attempted suicide. Not having been successful at that, I discovered alcohol one night in a football field at O'Gorman High School. We used to steal booze from our parents and put them in baby food jars or peanut butter jars, mayonnaise jars, and go down to the bottom of the football field, and we would have a cocktail party, the kind that only people in high school have. You trade your baby food jars with each other. And that night, for some reason, something switched in me. Some switch was flipped, and I took a drink of alcohol, and I could physically, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally feel a change. Now, I couldn't verbalize that to you then, but the more I understand about alcoholism, the more I understand that moment. I got down into the football field by climbing down a hill I, however, could not get back up the football field because I had thrown up while I was still down there. I fell down, and I have no recall today of how I got up the hill or how I got home. And I knew two things the next morning as I was continuing to barf. I never was going to do that again, and I couldn't wait until I could do it again. And so I drank every opportunity after that I could, as much as you can drink when you're in high school and wearing a Catholic girl uniform to school. So I drank as much as I could when I could. Things continued to progress at home, got much worse at home, and I continued to cope by drinking. Alcohol was always, and for a long time, a solution for me. It was the only way that I could square with the world. It was the only way that I could pretend that bad things didn't exist, and I could pretend that I was something different than I was. And so for a long time, alcohol really worked beautifully for me until it didn't. After high school, I was on my way to college, and I took a test before I went to college, and it was a pregnancy test, and I passed it with flying colors. And so I had to put college back. I had to hand back a scholarship for college because at that time you couldn't go to college while you were trying to be a single parent. Nobody in my family was really jazzed about the fact that I was going to have a baby, and so I had my daughter when I was just a month past 18 years old. I couldn't find a way to live without her. And so I took that little baby to live with me, an 18-year-old raving alcoholic, and we started our lives together. She and I, well, I should say, thank God she doesn't have much recall of it. But I live the kind of life that you live when you're 18 and you're drinking and you're trying to find a way to keep ends together and raise a child. Any 18-year-old that you know of, put them in the position of motherhood and let your imagination run. And that was my life, and that was that little girl's life. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous because I felt like I was struggling with alcohol. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 27 years old. It was in the summertime, and my best friend's little girl had been killed in a car accident, and my brother was in serious legal trouble, and it looked like he was going to end up in prison. And in my family, my role was always to go down to the jail with bail money and get the people out. Dad's in jail, go get him out. Brother's in jail, go get him out. So I went to speak to a cousin of mine that I knew was in Alcoholics Anonymous to try to find a way to get my other family members to stop drinking. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation with her, she suggested that I try a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I can honestly tell you that I was so mystified by the notion that I might be an alcoholic that I couldn't even be offended with her, because it never even dawned on me that I was struggling with alcohol. Now I was drinking, and I was leaving my little girl at babysitters and sometimes forgetting to pick her up. And I was lying to people at work so that I could leave early to go drink. I was doing all of those things, but I had no idea that had anything to do with alcoholism. So after that conversation, my cousin gave me a piece of paper, and she said, you should call this woman and see if she'd take you to a meeting. And the woman's name was Edie, and some of you may know her. And I went home from that meeting, and I called her, and I asked her if she would take me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she said, well, there isn't a meeting tonight, but honey, do you think you can stay sober for 24 hours? And I told her that I could, hung up the phone, and I thought, this woman is whacked. Can you stay sober for 24 hours? What a stupid ass question that was. Of course I can. So The next night came, and we're about an hour away from Edie coming to pick me up for the meeting, and all of a sudden it dawned on me that I had promised to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting with a perfect stranger, and I no longer felt like I needed to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was sitting on the front porch of my apartment, and I was getting ready to go back in my house and call her to tell her I had developed strep throat. And as I stood up to go back in, some great big long car comes driving slowly down my street, and some woman who's driving pokes her head out her open window and yells, "Honey, hang on, I'll turn the car around." And it was Edie. She'd come an hour early to pick me up for the meeting. So I got in the car with Edie, and on the way out to the meeting, this woman told me what I was going to experience in my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. She said I was going to go in a great big room. A lot of people would be smoking. Don't you talk to any men, she said. You stick right close to me, and you just sit there like you've been coming for 100 years. And she said, we're going to stand up, and we're going to say a prayer. And if you don't feel like praying, you don't have to pray. And they're going to ask you to stand up if you're new. Don't you stand up. You don't have to stand up. And then she said, we're going to go into a room, and we're going to talk about ourselves. But you're not going to say a word. So we got out to Southside. We got into a big room. We sat down. And everything that that woman told me was going to happen in that meeting happened. We stood up. We said a prayer. A man tried to talk to me, and she pulled me away. They asked newcomers to stand, and I sat there because she had her arm on my arm. And we went into a squad room, and I listened to people share their experience, strength, and hope around a table at my first Step 1 meeting. And I heard things that I'd never heard before. I heard people talk about relationships with their kids. Some guy had nerve enough to go to a wedding dance and didn't have to get drunk to dance. Somebody sang karaoke without drinking. To this day, I don't think that's a good idea, but I hear people do it. And I looked around the table and I saw people with authentic smiles on their faces. And I also saw some people that were sharing some hard things with authentic sadness on their faces. And I was so struck by that. But I was more struck by the fact that everything that that woman told me was going to happen in that meeting happened. I had been so far removed from any kind of truth or authenticity that somebody just telling me what was going to happen in a room made such a profound effect on me that I had to go back for my second meeting. I didn't hear anything in that room that I went home that I can remember to tell you tonight, oh, this is what brought me back. It was the experience of that woman telling me the truth and the experience of seeing people smile and seem to be authentically happy and authentically sad that brought me back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I still wasn't even convinced that I was an alcoholic. I still thought I was there to gather information so I could bring it back to my family and sober them up. And then once they were in, I could go. And as I live and breathe, I am still the only member of my family coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody else in my family is sober. And so it's a good thing that my plan didn't work out, at least for me. It's good my plan didn't work out. I will tell you that in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have experienced bad things and I've experienced good things. I can remember going to a conference when I was, I want to say probably in my first year and a half of sobriety, because by this time, although we're not supposed to make any major decisions in Alcoholics Anonymous, our first year of sobriety, I'd already started dating almost immediately. I got married within my first year and a half of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was pregnant. Only only because you're not supposed to do it, and only because I thought I knew better than my sponsor knew. When we went to a conference, Joe and Charlie came and did a conference, a big book study out at the Ramkota. And if none of you have heard the Joe and Charlie tapes, I would highly recommend that you get them and find a way to sit down and listen to them. They're phenomenal. And to see them in person was a huge, huge honor. But out at the Ramkota, during a break, we left for supper and we came back, and there was a van parked kind of in the parking lot furthest away from the front door of the conference. And it was an old van, and there were some people gathered around it. And we came to learn that there was a man in that van who had put a garden hose from his tailpipe into his window and had committed suicide right outside the parking lot of a conference of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was the second of a really profound experience that I had here, that he was so, so close to the answer and so, so close to a solution for what I'm sure troubled him. And yet he was so far away. He was just a parking lot away, but to him, he was so, so far away. And I've never forgotten it. I could tell you the color of that van. I could tell you a lot of things about that van. So my life in Alcoholics Anonymous didn't get good. I heard a lot of speakers, circuit speakers at conferences talk about they came to Alcoholics Anonymous, they sobered up, they got their families back, they got their dignity back, they got a lot of things back. And it seemed like when I got sober, I lost more than I gained at first. Nobody in my family really wanted to be around me, because when you're sobering up and the people that you love the most are still drinking, you're a big threat to them. I didn't see it that way at the time. It just felt very hurtful, but I was a big threat to them. To sit in a room facing somebody who they used to drink with who wasn't drinking anymore, that's a big deal. And I learned to love them. I learned to love them right where they are, but I lost my family when I first came here. Not long after I had my son, my husband and I decided that we should divorce, which only made sense. If you knew us then, it would make perfect sense to you that we didn't last very long. Very, very good friends today, but not so much then. So I lost my family and I lost my husband, and I felt like I'd lost my dignity. I was so humiliated by the fact that I'd come to Alcoholics Anonymous, discovered I was an alcoholic, lost my family, and lost my husband, that I couldn't be truthful with anybody in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so my new game was, I would go to meetings and I would tell everybody how great my life was, how good I was working the program. I'm a good reader, and I can usually remember what I read, so I could quote things out of the book. I could tell you stuff. I was sponsoring people, and inside, I was dying. I was lonely. I was scared. I was emotionally drunk because I didn't know how to tell anybody the truth. And I found my second sponsor in that space. And God really does know what he's doing, and his timing truly, truly is perfect. I still have that sponsor today. She and I hit it off almost immediately. She took me out for the sponsor interview. She told me she didn't babysit, that if I had a problem, she couldn't read my mind. I better learn how to pick up the phone. And if I didn't, and if I went out and got drunk and I didn't call her, that I probably shouldn't call her again. So it was really loving, tender conversation with her. But that woman loved me into authentic sobriety. When she would have parties at her house, she would call me and she would tell me that she didn't have a big coffee pot, or she didn't have some utensil that she knew I had, so that I would have to show up at her party. And I finally caught on to that about 5 parties in. I finally caught on to the fact that this woman had quite a bit of money. I bet she did have a coffee pot. I bet she did. But she showed me how to be around people, and she showed me how I could let people love me and how I could let people be around me, because I'm very introverted. I'm probably an extroverted introvert is what I would call myself. I don't mind being around people, but after I'm around you, I have to go home and go under my bed for a couple of days just to recover from that. And she knew that about me, and she just loved me into this true sobriety. I also met a man who had long time sobriety, was in his late 70s when I came to know him, and he became a great mentor of mine. And we'd go after the Saturday morning meeting at Southside, and we'd go sit at the old Barnes and Noble, and we'd have soup and sandwiches with me and Eva and Bill Murphy, and he would spout wisdom and tell jokes. And when he got to laughing, he'd snort and snort, but he took my chin and he picked it up off my chest, and he made me look at the world square in the eye. He made me read books from authors that were beyond my comprehension, because he told me I needed to learn that I could do hard things. And even if I didn't think that I was smart enough, I could do it, and he would help me do it. And my friend Eva walked with me through my divorce. She walked with me while I was trying to figure out how to be a sober mom. She walked with me when I was trying to figure out how to be an employee. She walked with me through it all. And those are the gifts that I've gained in early sobriety from Alcoholics Anonymous. I will tell you probably what I think is my only funny, tragic drinking work story. And then I'll tell you where I am today and why I'm telling you a work story. I was probably not at the end of my drinking. I was probably at the height of my drinking. And I had a job at a laboratory. I was a medical transcriptionist. And I got mad one day, and I can't tell you why I got mad, because I got mad often. And I had an argument with my office manager, and I quit my job. I just quit my job. Now I had a little girl at home. I had rent to pay. I was a raging alcoholic. I had no means to support myself. Nobody else was supporting me, but I walked out of my job, and I went home, and I planted my daughter into a daycare. Her daycare provider told them there was an emergency, and I proceeded to get drunk. And then I was going to figure out what to do. And that was probably my longest binge of drinking, because I just was so ill-adapted to reality that in order to cope with it, I had to drink through it. So I finally strung together a few days of sobriety, and I called an employment agency, and they got me a job interview. And I was so happy to have a job interview that I went out to celebrate the fact that I had a job interview. I went to my interview, I got drunk, and it was that kind of drunk that you get home so late that you can't possibly be sober by 10 o'clock in the morning. And yet there I was at 8 o'clock in the morning, my phone ringing that I was called back for a second interview. Now, I was still quite intoxicated, and I had not showered, but the person I had to do the second interview with was leaving town, and I had to go in and interview. So I got out of bed, and I did what every well-adjusted alcoholic woman would do. I found some Lysol, and I sprayed it in my room and walked through it like you do perfume. And I did that several times, and I wiped under my eyes so that the raccoon eyes at least were gone. And I brushed my teeth, and you know that you need to brush your teeth for 3.5 weeks before that drunk goes away. And I go to my second interview, and I don't remember anything about the interview. And I left. And to celebrate the fact that I had survived that interview, I went out some more. Now that next Monday came along and I couldn't remember whether I had been hired for the job. So I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to handle that. If I didn't show up, I was not going to have a job. But if I did show up and I hadn't been hired, that would be humiliating. So I made up a story that I had forgotten something there, and I was going to go back at about the time you should show up for work, and then I was just going to say that I had forgotten whatever it is, gloves, whatever it is that I was going to say that I had forgotten. And if they gave me the gloves, then I would take them and go. Or they told me that no, they didn't have the gloves. That would be my sign that they hadn't hired me, and I would go. Or if when I walked in the door, they said, well, hi, it's great to see you. There was probably a pretty good chance I'd been hired. So that's what I did. And lo and behold, I had a job. And today, that story to me is hilarious. But I'll tell you, then it was absolutely terrifying to me that I could not remember, number one, what I'd said to this man that I interviewed with. Number two, that I could not remember anything about going home. And number three, I couldn't remember whether somebody had hired me to do a job for them. And I just tucked that information in the back of my head as soon as somebody said that I had that job, because I can only hang on to bad information about myself as long as, it serves my purpose. But when something good happens, then I can manage to just put that away and forget all that bad stuff. Now, this is good. This is what I'm doing today. We don't have to think about that bad stuff. When I started working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll tell you, I probably took steps 1, 2, and 3 the first night that I came here. I mean, I recognized I was getting in the car with a complete stranger, and I was willing to come to a meeting. And although I had not admitted that I was powerless over alcohol because I didn't know I had a problem with alcohol, I knew when I went into those rooms that there was some kind of an answer for me. I just didn't know what that answer was, and I didn't know what problem it was trying to solve, but I was willing to come back to see. I didn't realize that I was an alcoholic probably for the first year that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And yet God was so faithful to me that just because I was willing to walk in the doors and just because I was willing to at least make an attempt to do something, I stayed sober. I stayed sober through a bad marriage. I stayed sober through a divorce. I stayed sober through bringing another child here. I stayed sober through jobs, not because of anything that I was capable of doing, but because I think God is just that merciful when you're willing, even if you're stupid. Even if you're stupid, if you're willing, God will meet you more than halfway. When I came to my fourth and fifth step, I wrote my fourth step in red because that's how I felt I was. I just felt like I was the terrible person. Went and gave my fourth step to a priest in my fifth step. And then step 6 and 7 came up, worked through step 6 and 7, made a list of people I had harmed, and then tried to make amends. And I'll tell you, 2 people that were on my step 8 list were my mom and my dad. And they stayed on my step 8 list. My mom did for 13 years before I had a chance to make a real amend to her. And my dad stayed on probably a good 20-some years before I had a chance to make an amend to him. But I'll tell you why I told you my work story tonight, and I'll tell you why I think Alcoholics Anonymous is truly a miracle. Because of Alcoholics Anonymous and because of working the steps and because of good sponsorship, I was able to stay at the job that I was too drunk to remember I'd been hired for. That boss paid for me to go to night school. and I got my degree and became a paralegal. And that had nothing to do with the job I was doing for him. He was just that kind of a boss. And I started to work in a law firm. And I worked at my prior job for 25 years. And this summer, 2 months ago, I left that job and started another job that it's still in law, but it's completely different than what I was ever doing before. And why I think that that's such an incredible thing is because I'm an alcoholic and I hate change. That finally, after 25 years, I knew what I was supposed to do every day. And it was easy, and it was predictable, and I was making money doing it. And yet, somewhere inside, I knew that there was something else that I needed to do. And I will tell you that after changing jobs, it didn't fix everything that was wrong with the prior job, because that isn't what happens when you sober up in Alcoholics Anonymous. You don't get fixed and things don't get perfect. You learn how to adapt and you learn how to change. And every day I get up and I go to this new job and I just keep waiting for something to fall apart. I just keep waiting, you know, for the shoe to drop, you know, something to go wrong. And it hasn't. This job is just okay. It's not the best job I've ever had. It's not the worst job I've ever had. I'm learning something new every single day. I feel like I felt like when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Every time I go to work, I learn something new. And I love the fact that because of the tools and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, that I don't have to drink to get through that. That I don't have to have a drink to go to work. That I don't need a standing ovation for showing up for work on time. That every day, since I've been sober, I brush my teeth every day. And sometimes I will tell you still, that is my only success. When I lay my head down, if I've done nothing else right during the day, I brush my teeth. Gosh darn it. And that is the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Back to my 8th and 9th step with my mom and dad. My mom and dad both were alcoholic, and my mom also had a lifelong addiction to pain medication. And like I said, home was fun, and it was awful. And my parents divorced, and it was messy, and they took prisoners. It was not good, and it left our family in shambles. And when I sobered up, I tried to help my mom get into treatment a couple of different times, but it was never her time to come into treatment. And I had to make the decision that either I was going to drink over that or I was going to have to let her go. And so I had to let my mom go, and I had to let a lot of my family members completely go. And so there was no contact between me and my mom for 13 years. And I got a call one morning at work from a sister of mine who I hadn't spoken to for a number of years as well. And she said, if you were ever going to see Mom before she dies, today would be the day that you would probably want to come up here. And I went to the hospital, and my mom was in a coma. And I thought, well, at least I get to see her. And I will also tell you that my mom just didn't sit on my amends list. I talked to my sponsor about my mom. I talked to my spiritual director about my mom. I attempted to write letters to my mom that just never fully got written and never fully got sent. But the one thing that I did do, as long as she was on my amends list, is I don't think I missed the day where I didn't say some kind of a prayer for my mom. And that's what my sponsor told me to do. Until God makes the wherever possible, you keep her on your prayer list. And I did. And the same with my dad. So here I am, and I'm in her hospital room, and she's in a coma. And miraculously enough, a couple of days later, she came out of her coma. And I got to actually experience talking to my mom after 13 years. And she was in very, very, very ill health. But one night, I was there late, and I did have an opportunity to make my amend to her, and she made an amend back. And I think that whole thing, 13 years apart, and it took maybe 3.5 minutes for it all to go away. And she and I made our amends, and I asked her what I could do to make up for what I had done to her. And she said, well, just visit me. And so every day from that day forward until my mom died, I went up to the hospital. Sometimes I could only stay there for 10 minutes. Sometimes I could stay longer. But because of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was able to walk back into that hospital and see my mom every day until my last visit with her, just on a whim. I stopped up in the morning, and her doctor had been there, and she opened her eyes to say thank you to her doctor, and she took her last breath. And I happened to be the person standing in the room with her. And that is a gift. And I will tell you that I don't know what effect my presence had on my mom, but I will tell you the gift that God gave me is that tonight, standing before you, I know what it feels like to be somebody's daughter. And that's what God gave to me. He is so personal, and he is so direct, and he is so intimate that he gave me the gift of being able to know what it feels like to be somebody's daughter. Now, my dad also, same thing, really couldn't be a part of his life. God got a little bit trickier this time. My father has Alzheimer's. And the nursing home that my brothers and sisters put my dad in was 2 blocks away from my home. So God literally put him in my backyard and dared me to ignore him. And so I went to see my dad, and he has not known me since the first day that I went to see him at the nursing home. He has no idea who I am. He's still alive. That was 8 years ago. I've gone to visit him. I've missed a few weeks, but by and large, weekly. He's never known who I was. And the irony is he really didn't know who I was when he didn't have Alzheimer's either. So this is not a new thing. But so many people have expressed that Alzheimer's has taken so much away from them. And I will again tell you, because of the grace and the mercy and the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous, Alzheimer's has given me back my dad. And I'm not so concerned today with the fact that he doesn't know who I am. I know who he is. And that is because of you. And that is because of friendships that I forged in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's because of the gifts that I've been given in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's because I practice step 10. And when I'm wrong, I can admit it. And that's because I practice step 11. And I have a personal relationship today with God. And when that relationship slips, I don't blame that on God anymore. And I do 12-step work. And I carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, or try to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous into my daily life. I do show up, and I do try to work an honest day's work. And I do try to be respectful of my employer. Today, I have a relationship with my kids. I've got 2 grown kids, and I've got 7 grandkids. And I know all of their names, and I know what they like to do. And more importantly, my children trust me to care for their children. Tomorrow, I get to have my grandson, Henry, spend the weekend with me, each one of the grandkids, once they're 5 years old, because I am still an alcoholic. Once they're 5, they get to come and spend a weekend with me, and we do whatever they want to do. And so tomorrow is Henry's turn. But my daughter and my son trust me with the most important people in their lives. And that never, ever could have happened without this program and without these steps and without these principles. And I will tell you, if you're new in sobriety and you feel like crap, that's okay. That's okay. If you're new in sobriety and you're having drunk dreams, that's not unusual, that's okay. If you're new in sobriety and you feel like drinking, you should. You're an alcoholic. If you've got some years in sobriety and all of that's happening to you, welcome to the show. Drunk Joan is alive and well and still living inside of me. She gets up with me every morning. She goes to work with me every morning. She's in my car with me during rush hour traffic. She gets irritated, she gets frustrated, but she no longer rules my life. She's always there in the background. If I am in trouble or I have done something to hurt somebody, she is always the first person to suggest to me that perhaps I just lied to get out of it. She is not the person that has the last say anymore. Her words are not my actions anymore. But Drunk Joan, she's always there. She always will be there. But because of this program and because of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, she doesn't run my life anymore. God does. And so she can chatter all the way home. She chattered to me all the way here. She chattered to me there. I forgot my name before I stood up. My worst fear coming here was that I would sit down and realize my zipper had been down and I had broccoli in my teeth. And I had stood before you. Little did I know that I would be looking at the red light from a microphone to some live feed. Again, thank you, Michael. Prayers, always prayers with you. But what I've discovered is in this room and in any other room of Alcoholics Anonymous that I stand in, I see faces of people that I love. I see faces of people that get up in the morning and sometimes we want to just stay home and we don't. And we're the only people that understand that about each other. I can only sit in a room full of alcoholics and say, I did not want to go to, I just wanted to stab my boss today. And there's 5 people shaking their heads. Yes. And no, I'm not serious, but shaking their heads with the kind of understanding that I can't get anywhere else in the world. I get it here. And because I get it here, I know I can get up. I know I can breathe one more day. I know I can do my life one more day. And I know I can stay in recovery. I am so thankful to be here with you tonight. I never will be able to say, I don't think, maybe on my deathbed. I'll never be able to say that I'm grateful to be an alcoholic because I'm not grateful to be an alcoholic. I think it's a hideous disease. It kills people. It really warps us. So I can never be grateful that I'm an alcoholic, but I'm so grateful that because I'm an alcoholic, God made Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't have to live like an alcoholic anymore. And I will always, always, always be grateful for that. I thank you guys so much for inviting me now that I've stood here before you and talked, for you allowing me to share my story with you. I look out and I've seen so many familiar faces tonight, and I'm so thankful that I got an opportunity to be here with you. And I wish you all healthy, happy, doable sobriety. And I thank God for each and every one of you, even those of you that I don't know, because in some way, shape, or form, we've made an imprint on each other tonight. And I'll take a little bit of you, and I hope you take a little bit of me and melt it into your sobriety as we continue to recover together. Thank you.
Let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Ta-da!